On a crisp October evening in the quiet town of Willow Creek, Daniel Harper vanished without a trace. At first, it looked like a random act of violence, a man taken off the streets of his own hometown. But as investigators dug deeper, the truth revealed something no one expected. Daniel Harper, the man everyone thought they knew, was living a double life. And in that double life, they would find both motive and murder. This is the story of the disappearance of Daniel Harper. Willow Creek was the kind of American town you'd pass by without noticing. A single main street, family-owned diners, kids riding bikes at dusk. It was safe, familiar, ordinary. And for many, Daniel Harper was the best example of that small-town pride. At 32 years old, Daniel was well-liked and well-respected. He was a high school history teacher, the kind who decorated his classroom walls with old maps and quotes from Lincoln and Roosevelt. He coached basketball in the winters, volunteered at church on Sundays, and took care of his widowed mother who lived on the edge of town. To his students, he was a mentor. To his neighbors, he was the guy who shoveled sidewalks in the winter without being asked. And to his family, he was their rock. So when he didn't show up to school one Monday morning, alarm bells went off almost immediately. Daniel wasn't the kind of man to just disappear. On the evening before he went missing, October 14th, Daniel attended a small gathering at a local diner. A few teachers, some old friends. Nothing unusual. He stayed until about 9:30, then left in his dark blue pickup truck. He waved goodbye, promised to see everyone at school the next day. That was the last confirmed sighting of him. By the next morning, when he didn't show for class, the principal called his cell phone. No answer. His mother tried too. Straight to voicemail. By evening, his truck was found abandoned near a wooded area just outside of town. Driver's door ajar, keys still in the ignition. It looked like a crime scene, but there was no blood, no signs of struggle. Just an empty truck. Within 24 hours, the community mobilized. Volunteers searched the woods. Police combed through nearby fields. Helicopters scanned from above. For a town like Willow Creek, this was unthinkable. People left doors unlocked. Kids played outside until dark. Suddenly, everyone was on edge. Parents kept children close. Strangers eyed each other with suspicion. Daniel's mother, Evelyn, held a press conference, pleading for her son's safe return. Her voice cracked as she clutched a framed photo of him, saying, "Daniel is a good man. Please, if someone has him, bring him back." The story spread beyond Willow Creek. News vans parked outside the police station. Reporters swarmed. America was about to learn Daniel Harper's name. At first, police suspected a random act. Maybe a robbery gone wrong. Maybe Daniel picked up the wrong hitchhiker. But nothing was missing. Not his wallet, not his phone, not his truck. Then came whispers of something darker. A few of Daniel's colleagues quietly told police he had seemed distracted lately. One teacher described him as haunted, like he was carrying a burden he couldn't talk about. A neighbor recalled seeing Daniel pacing outside late at night, speaking on the phone in hushed tones. It didn't fit the image of the perfect son, the perfect teacher. And that's when investigators realized that Daniel Harper they all knew may not have been the full story. Police obtained a warrant to search Daniel's home. His modest two-bedroom house looked ordinary. Stacks of graded papers, basketball trophies, neatly folded laundry. But in his desk drawer, they found something unexpected. Letters, dozens of them, written to a woman no one in Willow Creek knew. Her name was Melissa Carter. She lived 2 towns over, and according to the letters, she wasn't just a friend. She was in love with Daniel. For years, Daniel had been in a secret relationship, and Melissa wasn't just anyone. She was married. Suddenly, the disappearance of Daniel Harper wasn't about a random act of violence. It was about a tangled web of love, betrayal, and possibly revenge. When police questioned Melissa, she admitted the affair. She and Daniel had met at a teachers' conference 5 years earlier. They kept in touch, then started meeting in secret. She claimed Daniel had grown frustrated. He wanted her to leave her husband, a wealthy businessman named Charles Carter. Melissa told investigators she loved Daniel, but couldn't bring herself to break free from her marriage. It would ruin everything, she confessed. She also revealed something chilling. Daniel had told her he was being followed. In the weeks before his disappearance, he'd grown paranoid. He believed Charles knew about the affair. And Charles Carter? He had both motive and money. Charles was a man with influence. He owned half the car dealerships in the county, donated to local campaigns, and wasn't used to hearing the word no. When reporters swarmed him about the affair, he appeared calm. Too calm. He denied knowing Daniel, denied any involvement, and dismissed the story as nonsense. But police weren't convinced. Phone records showed Charles had called a private investigator just 2 weeks before Daniel vanished, and that investigator had tailed Daniel for days. So when Daniel disappeared, just after being followed, suspicion fell squarely on Charles Carter. In Willow Creek, people were stunned. Their beloved teacher, caught in an affair? Their neighbor, living a double life? And now, whispers of murder for hire. Detectives tracked down the private investigator Charles Carter had hired. His name was Frank Lawson, a retired cop with a reputation for bending the rules. At first, Frank was reluctant to talk, but under pressure and the threat of obstruction charges, he turned over his surveillance notes. The pages were filled with dates, times, and locations. They confirmed that Daniel had been followed from his school to Melissa's house, even late-night drives to isolated areas. But there was one entry that stood out. October 14th, the night Daniel disappeared. The note was vague. Target met with unknown male. Heated argument. Forest Road 9:45 p.m. That was 15 minutes after Daniel was last seen at the diner. The same night his truck was abandoned. Police pressed Lawson on the identity of the unknown male, but Lawson claimed he didn't know. He said the meeting was too far away to see clearly. It left investigators with more questions than answers. Who was the man Daniel argued with? And was Charles Carter behind it? Charles insisted he was home that night. His wife Melissa reluctantly confirmed the alibi, but her story didn't sit right with detectives. Phone records revealed Charles had driven out of town briefly that evening. His phone had pinged off a tower near Forest Road 9, the exact place Daniel's truck was later found. When confronted, Charles brushed it off. He claimed he had been out running errands, but couldn't remember what kind. Detectives now had motive, opportunity, and suspicious behavior. But what they didn't have was a body. Without that, proving murder would be nearly impossible. 2 weeks later, during a volunteer search, a breakthrough finally came. A hunter stumbled across a blood-stained jacket deep in the woods. A jacket later confirmed to be Daniel's. Inside the pocket was his wallet, driver's license still intact. The discovery electrified the investigation. Forensics revealed the blood matched Daniel's DNA. There was also a second DNA sample, belonging to an unidentified male. For the first time, investigators had physical evidence. And that evidence didn't just suggest Daniel had been attacked. It suggested he might not have been alone in his double life. The second DNA sample opened a new line of inquiry. Detectives began to dig deeper into Daniel's past. They spoke with old friends, former students, and even neighbors. Slowly, a different picture of Daniel emerged. He wasn't just the perfect son and teacher. He had secrets. One neighbor claimed she had seen unfamiliar cars parked outside Daniel's house late at night. Another mentioned overhearing shouting matches through the walls, not with Melissa, but with someone else. Then came the biggest revelation. Daniel had been receiving large sums of money in recent months. His bank records showed cash deposits totaling nearly $40,000. Where had the money come from? And what was Daniel involved in? Investigators soon uncovered the truth. Daniel had been drowning in debt. Credit cards maxed out, late mortgage payments, even payday loans. It appeared that his spotless image hid a financial collapse. Some suspected he was being blackmailed. Others believed he had turned to illegal activities for extra cash. Whatever the case, the debts gave someone else a motive. And suddenly, the list of suspects expanded beyond Charles Carter. Through forensic testing, the unidentified DNA on Daniel's jacket was matched. It belonged to a man named Eric Lawson. The name raised immediate red flags. Eric was the estranged son of Frank Lawson, the very private investigator Charles had hired. Eric had a criminal record: drug trafficking, burglary, and violence. He was also known to do odd jobs for his father. Detectives now had a chilling theory. Charles Carter may have paid Frank Lawson to follow Daniel, and Eric Lawson may have been the one to make sure Daniel never came back. When confronted, Frank Lawson denied everything. He claimed Eric had acted on his own, but detectives weren't convinced. They believed Charles had orchestrated the disappearance. Frank had provided surveillance. Eric had carried out the crime, and together, they had silenced Daniel Harper. But proving it would require more than theory. They needed hard evidence, a link between Charles, Frank, and Eric. And that's when investigators stumbled upon the most damning clue yet. Daniel's cell phone had never been found, but weeks after his disappearance, it suddenly pinged back online, briefly connecting to a cell tower 50 miles away. Police traced the signal to a pawn shop, where the phone had been sold for $200 cash. Security footage showed the seller, Eric Lawson. That single piece of evidence connected Eric directly to Daniel's disappearance. But even more shocking was what they found on the phone. Buried in Daniel's messages were screenshots of threatening texts. They came from an unknown number, but the language was chilling. Stay away from her. Last warning. Melissa Carter's name was mentioned explicitly, and investigators believed those messages tied back to Charles himself. By now, Willow Creek was unrecognizable. The story of their beloved teacher had twisted into something unthinkable. An affair, a powerful husband, a corrupt investigator, and now a violent criminal son. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some swore Daniel was still alive, hiding under a new identity. Others whispered that his body was buried deep in the woods. But one thing was certain. The Harper case had exposed the underbelly of a town that once thought itself safe. On December 2nd, nearly 2 months after Daniel vanished, police made their move. Eric Lawson was arrested first, charged with obstruction, theft, and suspected involvement in Daniel's disappearance. He denied killing Daniel but admitted to scaring him. Then came Frank Lawson, charged with conspiracy and aiding in the cover-up. Finally, pressure mounted on Charles Carter. With Melissa refusing to back his alibi, investigators prepared to bring charges against him too. But just as the case seemed ready to break open, a shocking discovery would change everything. During a search of remote hunting cabins owned by the Lawson family, investigators uncovered something chilling. In one of the cabins, hidden under a floorboard, was a set of items belonging to Daniel Harper. His watch, his glasses, and a blood-stained shirt. It was the final piece of the puzzle, evidence that Daniel had been taken there and likely never left alive. And yet, one question remained unanswered. Where was his body? As the winter frost settled over Willow Creek, search teams combed the dense forest surrounding the Lawson family's hunting cabins. They dug through frozen soil, swept lakes with sonar, and even brought in cadaver dogs. But despite the mounting evidence, one thing remained missing: Daniel Harper's body. Without it, a conviction against Charles Carter would be difficult. And the town was growing restless. It was Melissa Carter, the woman at the center of it all, who finally cracked the case wide open. After weeks of silence, she agreed to sit down with detectives. Through tears, she admitted she had loved Daniel, but said she never believed Charles would go this far. Then she dropped a bombshell. The night Daniel disappeared, she had overheard Charles on the phone with Frank Lawson. His words were chilling. "Make sure this ends tonight." It was the closest thing to a confession investigators had ever heard. Eric Lawson was the first to face trial. Prosecutors painted him as the violent enforcer who carried out Charles Carter's orders. The pawn shop footage, the DNA on Daniel's jacket, and the items found in the cabin all pointed directly to him. Eric admitted to roughing Daniel up, but insisted he never killed him. He claimed Daniel ran off after the beating. The jury didn't buy it. Eric Lawson was convicted of kidnapping and assault and sentenced to 35 years in prison. Still, the lingering question haunted everyone. If Eric didn't kill Daniel, then who did? Next came the trial that gripped the entire state. Charles Carter versus the people of Willow Creek. The courtroom was packed with reporters, community members, and Daniel's grieving family. Prosecutors laid out their case. Charles had motive, jealousy, and rage. He had the means, money, and influence. And he had the connection, the Lawson family, the threatening text messages, Melissa's testimony, and the phone tower data placed him near the scene. Charles, however, maintained his innocence. He claimed Melissa fabricated her story to protect herself. He argued Daniel's financial troubles and mysterious cash pointed to dangerous dealings that had nothing to do with him. The defense's strategy was clear: paint Daniel as a man with enemies outside of Willow Creek. After weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated. The evidence was damning, but the absence of a body created doubt. In a shocking verdict, Charles Carter was acquitted of murder. He walked free, smiling coldly as the Harper family sobbed in the gallery. But his freedom didn't last long. Just as the trial concluded, federal investigators launched a separate case. This time, on charges of conspiracy and witness tampering, Charles was arrested again, proving the story was far from over. Even with the convictions, one truth remained: Daniel Harper's body was never found. Some believed Charles had hidden it so well that it would never be discovered. Others whispered darker theories, that Daniel had staged his own disappearance, using his debts and double life as a way to escape. Melissa Carter moved away quietly, leaving Willow Creek behind. She never spoke publicly again. The Lawson family crumbled under the weight of their crimes, their once respected name forever stained. And the town of Willow Creek was left with a wound that may never fully heal. Today, Daniel Harper's case remains officially unsolved. His disappearance continues to be studied in law schools as a cautionary tale about missing persons cases without bodies. His story is shared on true crime forums, with amateur sleuths debating whether justice was truly served. For his family, the pain never ended. Every holiday, every birthday, they leave a chair open at the table, a symbol of the son, brother, and teacher who vanished into the night. And for Willow Creek, the disappearance of Daniel Harper is more than a mystery. It's a reminder that beneath the surface of small-town America, even the most ordinary lives can hide the darkest secrets. Justice can feel incomplete without answers. And in the case of Daniel Harper, the truth remains just out of reach. Was he murdered? Or did he walk away? Was Charles Carter guilty? Or did someone else bury the truth forever? Until the day Daniel is found, Willow Creek will live under the shadow of a man who vanished, and the secrets that vanished with him.